surprise them by hitting just a little bit earlier than they were expecting and catching them off guard. It's all about the information gathering, the build orders, and the mind games, as always, in this game of real-time strategy that is StarCraft. In the top left side of the map, representing Weibo Gaming, it is Oliveira.
And in the bottom right, representing Twisted Minds, he is the Blue Protoss Classic.
Personally gutted when Kua turned that series around against him last year. Classic, so close to getting a final spot against Rainer in Gamers 8, and I really feel like he actually had a very good shot against Rainer. You know, he'd taken him out, I believe, earlier in that tournament. It's been a few of those near misses for Classic over the last year or so, where he's had these moments where he's brushed with greatness, brushed with championship runs, hasn't quite made that distance just yet.
Yeah, exactly. So close, it's so far. We do have Oliveira very much intentionally running away from potential probe scout to get this engineering bay block up without interference. When a Protoss sees this immediately, A, they could block it, and then B, they can pull the probes immediately and take care of it and just kind of make sure that their build is still as smooth as possible. When it's like this, it's going to be 99% done before Classic, really has anything to do against it. So you can't continue with perhaps that Nexus timing you were hoping for.
Yeah, slight reaction on the face there. Classic was absolutely not expecting that. And Oliveira's even tracking him to the third, so we can block that as well.
Okay, well, that didn't actually work out. I thought that it would, but no, Classic will be able to get a Nexus. Obviously, now the problem is that it's in the wrong location, right? So that does push you into a less defensible area than natural in StarCraft II maps. They're made with chokes, sometimes even ramps, not this map, but with chokes at the very least. Third base is a little more open, 3 different directions for Oliveira to get in there.
One of the difficult things here for the Protoss player now is judging what comes next. It's almost always a factory and an early reactor. The question is it Hellions or Cyclones? Because if Cyclones come across this map, you need to go, like Phoenix, Stalkers, batteries, things that can fight front on. However, if it's Hellions, you'd be much better off just rushing an Oracle, getting a shield battery up here or there, and just trying to stop the damage from getting too out of hand. We'll see what Oliveira's got in store as he places a command center on the high ground, and 2 Hellions to start off.
Yeah, this was really tricky when Engine Beer actually came back, I would say. It has been a thing for, I guess, all of the years of StarCraft II, but it was very tricky to begin with. And I remember Parting was actually one of the guys who was actually able to defend that third base as your natural. And since then, it really is not the catastrophic situation that it is, even though the Cyclones also got changed at some point, so they were even more fearsome in the early game. We know that the Protoss know what to expect. They know that it's going to be pretty tight on just the number of units they have to spread around, but if everything goes according to plan, you can absolutely defend this factory follow-up. It is going to be a decent amount of Hellions. We're going to see how Oliveira plans to try and get into Classic's mineral lines. He could go for the third, that's kind of the obvious one. He could try and sneak into the main and just kind of hope that Classic's a little out of position, which is something that Classic, needs to pay super close attention to. He doesn't know exactly where it's coming, but he knows it's coming.
3 Hellions is the magic number. That's what allows you to one-shot probes. Speak of the devil, get a run in. First probe goes down. 4 Hellions and a Reaper there. The Phoenix will pick up 1. 2 Stalkers in the depth are on point. They're trying to take down that Hellion. That Reaper grenade actually delayed 2 Stalker shots. Massive move.
Yeah, absolutely massive. A good pickup on the reinforcing Phoenix, making it a 2-shot instead. The probes come in to help out, and that is all the almost all the Hellions. Very weak probes. Third one is available. 9 probes in general. That's still something there for Oliveira. Remember, wasn't proxying a starport while doing that. That is actually damage that Classic was really hoping not to take. He was so close to being in perfect position, but just a little bit too much there.
There's 2 Stalker shots being delayed by that Reaper grenade is actually so big, because we see the difference there, right? If you've got 1 or 2 Hellions, it takes a while to take down the probes. You get just 1 or 2 extra Hellion hits in, and suddenly 9 probes is a really good start for the Terran. Second barracks and third barracks down, not to mention the factory. I think our Classic sees it, and he immediately goes, okay, hair standing on end. I know what's coming. I've gone for a third Nexus. How am I possibly going to defend this? Because you can move out now with just a massive Marines, Marauders, tanks. You don't even need medevacs. You can literally just go for look, I'll stim, and I know we're not healing. It doesn't matter. We're going to hit you you so fast, you won't be able to handle the sheer number of units.
Exactly. The 3 racks just gives you so much buy. You can see that Classic really knows that he is in trouble. He's going to have to do some magic here. I hope that Oliveira messes up slightly, which is still possible. Perhaps with some defender's advantage kicking in, Classic can actually hold on to all 3 of his Nexus and his probe count.
Trying to rush charge. I was thinking you can't go blink here. You just don't have time. This is such a desperate thing. You rarely see people just rushing charge Phoenix on 2 gas. But in this situation, it's the right call. Classic is cut probes, is just making gateways. He says, look, I didn't cancel the 3rd Nexus. It's there. If I defend this attack, then I can probe up. But for now, I am just on 2 mineral lines, 2 gases, and I'm desperately trying to get my production up. But Oliveira is not going to give him that time. The gateways are still building. No chance to warp in yet. Charge is still a minute away, and 2 tanks and a pack of Marine Marauder coming forwards.
Yeah, I would not have minded a couple of SCVs, and that's exactly what's coming. Can help out with the Cyclone as well. Build bunkers, too, if that actually comes to fruition. We do have a force field blocking the ramp initially. Another one actually in the back pocket. Tanks will have the siege to push those force fields away, but this is all those extra seconds that Classic desperately need to get that charge finished, to get the gateways finished, and to actually start warping in Zealots.
Oh, gateways and charge take so long to build when there's a Terran army coming across the map, Zombie Grub. It feels like this is not that long an upgrade. Gateways normally build pretty fast, but this is not a lot of time to get ready. 2 Stalkers, 2 Sentries, and only a handful of Zealots. 1 battery goes down. The pylon is exposed. Doesn't even have energy for battery overcharge. Classic does not have the numbers. The early damage combined with a 3rd Nexus follow-up was too much, and he knows he does not have the material to deal with this. Oliveira gets the damage done, the engineering base surprise, and then carries it forwards with the Hellions, and a decisive finishing blow. Every step planned to perfection before the game even started.
Exactly. That went according to plan for Oliveira. Obviously, the same cannot be said for Classic. He was thrown off for a minute 2, basically, because even though we do have these Protoss now understanding the complications of the situation, it doesn't mean that it's less difficult to handle, especially when the Terran's going to follow up with those 3 Raxes. As Pig was pointing out, say this doesn't quite work. That stim, the damage from the initial combat, if you have to pull away and come back, you're still injured. It is a dramatic difference if that first push doesn't do that damage.
Massive, massive difference indeed. It really is so committed, but you can see this Reaper Grenade just stopping those Stalkers from getting an extra volley off, and you can see the first volley already taking out 3 probes and so much damage on the following ones, and you think it's over, but the 1 Hellion drops, and the Adept unfortunately didn't get a chance to block it. So the Hellion moves away, the Stalkers aren't able to get more shots, and he gets multiple volleys off, taking down 3 more workers. There was a picture-perfect start in Game 1, something which is brutal in this best-of-3 format, and that's exactly what he wants. He'd love another brutal finish like that in Game 2. In the bottom left side of the map, the reigning world champion, representing Weibo Gaming, it's Oliveira.
And in the top right, as the blue Protoss now on his last life in the tournament for Twisted Minds, he is Classic.
For whatever reason, he did not expect an engineering bay block in that last game, and it caught him off guard completely. You could tell that he was not ready for that. It wasn't really something that he'd accounted for, and was a little bit shocked. Had to go take the 3rd base. Going for the Phoenix there, the Adepts and the Stalkers, the battery at the front. I mean, it felt like he had most of the pieces you need to defend that, and just wasn't perfectly positioned. Moved out to build a pylon, saw the Hellions coming. Those Stalkers just weren't quite in the direct path of the Hellions to fully intercept. So a 1 second difference, it sounds like a small thing, but when you're dealing with that build, you know there's incoming aggression. You really do have no room for error.
What about a shield battery?
In the main?
Yes.
2 shield batteries is expensive. I think the problem there is to afford it, you need to cut either Phoenix, Gateway, or Pro Production. And he wasn't willing to do that in case it was obviously a different follow-up. I think it's something where I've seen the shield battery in the main look great. Personally, I think it's always a different decision. Players will normally say, look, if I'm going Phoenix, I already have the best control unit. I got the Adepts and the Stalkers. I technically should be able to be in the right position. Yes, it's slightly riskier, but you know what? This way I can chrono probes harder, have an extra Adept or Stalker out. It should be good. hindsight, you always look at it afterwards and go, you know, I should have built the camera, or I should have built the shield battery. And you always say that afterwards, and everyone in Twitch chat is always saying that afterwards, and there's always the amateur players saying, why don't they just build more static defense? And the thing is, the pro player is always looking to avoid needing the static defense. It's always a kicker afterwards because you realize, oh, probably should have got it that time, but it's impossible to know that ahead.
It's a tightrope, and so, you know, that tightrope is very visibly represented with the Zerg race, balancing massive drone counts versus massive army swells, but it actually exists with the other races as well. You do want to cut those corners, especially when you're facing someone who is at an equal skill level than you, or perhaps even if you're an underdog, right, you take those risks. But if you consider yourself even, you want to go ahead and do that. Make sure you have the best macro game, should it have gotten there. And of course, it did not in that game. This time around, you do not have as many complications for Classic in the very early game, but Oliveira, with the factory expand, is going to be going for a lot of Reapers and Hellions. And this is still one of those situations where Classic may be able to figure it out. He might have the right tools, but being in the right position and guaranteeing 0 losses against it is extremely difficult.
Indeed. I think the gateway unit count's very important, and you know, we were talking about what should there be a battery in the main in that last game. In this case, there is a battery on the natural, which is absolutely necessary, but I think it's always the gateway count that matters. And I always feel like if you want to be extra safe in this matchup against these sort of openings, an extra chrono on the gateway, getting a 4th gateway unit out really early, that's what tends to shut these sorts of pressures down. There will be a Stalker out momentarily. There has been a small gap in gateway unit production, but only a small one. Reaper already going down, but of course, Hellions going to run in the natural as well. Probe block is fantastic. I mean, the cleanup in the main is great. Only one probe goes down there. These probes run to the battery. They should be okay, but they stack up a little. Shield battery healing so good, though.
Yes, it is. The Hellions, in fact, deciding they best actually get out of there, and both of them do live. That means they can come back for a 2-shot if Classic is ever not paying attention, but ultimately, when this stops, it really does stop. The Hellions are like, okay, you might scout the 3rd later on, but it is always there. Oliveira once again going for multiple barracks behind this, getting that stim, adding on the tanks. It is very similar, I believe, to the follow-up, if not identical, just without the engineering bay, that he is going to push through the middle of the map, and this is a shorter map as far as the rush distance, guys. It's about average, actually middle of the road for our map pool, but it is going to be difficult for Classic to hold. The thing is, Classic is actually getting to a nice production build. He's got gateways on the way, guys. He's got Blink on the way, War Prism here, and now actually this is one of those fight versus fight, army versus army situations. Does Oliveira realize this is happening and just say, okay, I'll stay back at home? Or does he push the issue and actually try and attack?
He's been cutting SCVs, so I feel like he feels like he might be forced to attack. Obviously, it still can work for the Terran. You've got a very high damage army, but if Classic manages things just right, I mean, he should be able to pick you off, right? He should be able to pick off units, blink back, move around, cut off your reinforcement, and you end up feeling very flat-footed against this as the Terran sees a few adepts there with the Hellions, and Classic actually calling for a pause from the admins. And we do have a pause. Not sure what the issue is. I'm sure we'll find out momentarily and let you all know. But in the moment, sometimes there are technical issues or disturbances that do arise, and that is something that will be getting solved. But we see forward right now, basically it's a blink pressure coming in up against Oliveira, who is super committed to, as you said, the same sort of build from the previous game. The difference is, hasn't had the big disruption. No engineering bay block.
Yeah.
The Hellion Reaper fell flat. 2 probes for 3 Reapers is definitely not a good trade. So it feels like, you know, this is kind of tactically Oliveira saying, I'll just win this best of 3, 2-0.
Exactly. I'm glad you brought that up, because I am, you know, guys, if you're cheering for the Protoss here, put your hands together, all right? You know, start praying, all right? Because this can theoretically be good for the Protoss. They can get a nice number of Stalkers and actually pick off any type of push as it comes across the map.
And we are back in game.
Oh, okay, we're back in the game. But we have seen plenty of top-tier TVPs still lose out to bad positioning. That War Prism does get sniped, kind of case in point right there. And without more reinforcements, you're certainly not going to overwhelm the bio. It might not want to chase, as it is bleeding out units. It would have bleeded out as well if they had actually like run back, but it's a matter of balance right now. And Classic also knowing that, knows that he has to buy time, pick off these units, and actually get defense back at home, because he did not stay on that side of the map as long as he was thinking he would. SCV's coming in from behind, almost like a little surround, catches 1 or 2 of them, and that is a blink past them. This is Oliveira pushing once again and getting into Classic's natural.
This is a crazy move right now for Oliveira. pulling the SCVs and stimming from halfway across the map. This is a desperate move. He realizes he's committed. As I said, he cut SCVs earlier, which means he wasn't non-stop producing economy. Oliveira knows he's got to get damage with the Stalker count very high. That shield battery ready to overcharge. Immortals are on the way. Now, there's no charge. There's nothing like that would easily clean this army up. Still need a very careful engagement for Classic, warping in 3 Zealots on the right side, ready to use those. I love that Stalker counterattack.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent addition right here for Classic, because Oliveira does have to respect the army. Oh, a tank is going to go down. That does take 2 of the Stalkers, maybe a third. Very, very close to it. I love the idea. He knows that he has some time on his side back at home, as Oliveira really has to calculate how he wants to push in here, and apparently he's calculating more SCVs, more good. They are on the way, perhaps again going to build bunkers, as this is now an elongated kind of contain. It looks like Classic's going to try and break out. Shield Body Overcharge is popped. SCVs do make it to the front of the line to block out those Zealots. The Immortal takes out one tank, but is now out of range of the other one, but he's helping against the Marauders, and the rest of the Protoss army was doing work. Classic adding on a lot of production, not getting interrupted in the early game, able to have the nice supply, the nice map presence and positioning to take down Oliveira's aggression.
Oliveira tried to take a shortcut here, doing a similar follow-up 2 games in a row. One of the easiest builds to kind of execute, and if the Protoss is a little sloppy, they will fall to it. But Classic remains firm on elimination point in the entire tournament, and he defends perfectly. That Immortal across the gap, reaching that siege tank as well, showing that position. It was just slightly off there for Oliveira, but I think even from the moment he was stimming in the middle of the map for a single Stalker kill, that's so expensive. That's so many hit points. Remember, Marauders lose 20 hit points. Marines 10 every time they stim. You've got no medevacs, no way to heal those up, and the idea usually is if you can sneak that army across the map or not have to stim until you get to their base, you just have so much more oomph to it. You want to catch a Protoss who's got 5 or 6 Stalkers, not one with 10 Stalkers on the map, in your face, diving in, picking off a siege tank at the start, getting so much damage done over and over again. So I feel like Classic there, he started off well, losing the Prism, made it just a little scary. You could tell he was like a little bit at the end of that game, like, okay, ooh, thankfully we survived. But overall, his early defense was fantastic, and that's why I think we're going to see a plan with a little bit more depth for the Terran player. Going into map 3 in the bottom map, bottom left side of the map, in the red, representing Weibo, it is Oliveira.
And in the top right, bringing it to a knife's edge for both of them, it is Twisted Minds Classic.
Chronoing the Nexus nice and early as per standard. Gateways coming up for that Reaper wall off, and Classic. You know, there's a lot of guys like Hero who don't like scouting in this matchup. Now, let's see if we can get away with it. Classic's been scouting every game. Despite that, in game 1, didn't see the engineering bay block coming in, and once again there's an SCV going around that left side of the map. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, zombie grub.
Oh, no. But Classic has to check this time, right?
You would think so?
Oh boy. By the way, this is just such an insane position. These two, best of 3, one of the remaining Protosses of very, very few. Oliveira, defending world champ. Everyone in the crowd, no doubt, just holding their breath. And unfortunately, that engineering bay was not found particularly quickly. A little bit faster than the first game, but the point is, it has gone so far. Again, you can't pull those probes, really take care of it. Get the Nexus down there. You got to get the Zealot down, and then it's really awkward. I mean...
it feels awkward to clean this up. Even with the Zealot being preemptively started, it's going to take so long to get through. But that being said, it's so much easier to defend. And I don't mind this. Okay, I'll get the second gas a bit earlier. I'll keep building my probes. It's awkward, but I think it's acceptable as a decision if you say, look, defending that third is just too fragile. We saw in game 1, I'm not comfortable with it. Will this put you massively behind? No, I don't think so. I think it makes your build a little different, a little more awkward. You have a bit more gas, a bit lower minerals. But as long as you keep up probe production, you build a third pylon a bit early, because the Nexus isn't going to be ready to unsupply block you. That's one of the key things he has to remember next after this Nexus goes down. As long as Classic does all that correctly, he comes out without being in too bad of a position. The scary thing is that Classic is not building any probes just yet, or that pylon. Does start another Stalker, and the gap of both of those is just a little worrying. Finally, that pylon does come up.
Yeah, I'm going to block out the Reaper as well. Hellions are on the way, as you do, I mean, basically all the time. If you engineering bay block, you're going to go for a factory beyond that, and you're going to apply more pressure. But as you were saying, you know, kind of when you decide, hey, that third base is not going to be good enough, you know, like theoretically I could hold it against all damage, but damn, is it hard. So the natural gives you such a better defensive position with that choke, particularly if you add on buildings. I need to be careful about adding on buildings because it could have been Cyclones, and Cyclones will take advantage of that type of SimCity. But we see that it is going to be 2 Hellions into number 3 and 4.
Wow.
Classic not getting a confirmation on the next 2 units, of course, but first and foremost, worry about those Hellions sneaking on in.
Is Oliveira doing the exact same build from Game 1, Zombie Grub?
Yes.
This is bizarre. It's another 2 racks into probably 3 racks follow-up. This is crazy. We don't see players repeating build orders, and especially follow-ups so much at this level, and yet it seems like Oliveira just has faith in this. And like I said, it's an easy to execute build. It's hard to make big mistakes with this as a Terran, and if the Protoss makes a big mistake, it's going to be very punishing. But that probe sees it coming. Are the units ready? Where are they? Stalkers moving into the low ground. Zealot gets a hit off. Stalker movement's good. Oh, beautiful block with the Stalkers and with the probe ball, but they stack up.
The grenade just popped the Stalker out of the way. 3 probes so far, but that is still some more damage to be had. 6 might just be the end. Good pull away on that last probe. Still feels sucky, basically, for a Protoss, because you almost had everything perfectly, but once again, the grenade really causing the damage that Oliveira was looking for a little more. 6 is not as good as 9.
Yeah.
But it is still that damage to throw off Classic's build and set up even a little bit more. Warp Prism is on the way for Classic. How many gateways does he have?
Even
just
with
literally 2.
You can still put on some nice pressure, right? You can do the drop in the main. You can see what's going on. The Observer's already going to spot that this is a 3 racks. And Classic didn't go for the 3rd. Not only did he protect 3 more probes compared to Game 1, doesn't build the 3rd Nexus, goes to the Twilight Council now, and that charge lot defense should actually be ready this time. And that's a huge difference maker compared to Game 1. Now, obviously, Oliveira is not just going all in. He has made a change. He's gone for the starport. We should see a 3rd gas and an engineering bay in the near future as well. So Oliveira's got a little bit more flexibility and depth to his play, but let's see how he weathers the counter-harassment. Classic only now adding a 3rd Nexus as he comes into the main base. Perfect tank positioning to start.
Nice SimCity around that. Again, these are not Blink Stalkers. We're so familiar seeing a Warp Prism and Stalkers in here, but this is much earlier on. So the Stalkers are just a different build. The Stalkers are going to be able to one-shot the Marines. They're going to be able to one-shot the SCVs, so it is a matter of just being in the right place to just stop 1 or 2 of them going down. And you can see that Classic with the good micro of the Warp Prism, almost giving himself Blink in that regard. We'll always have the threat of this Warp Prism, but because he is going to be adding on charge, not only better for, in case of push from Oliveira, it is also going to be really threatening with that Warp Prism. Oliveira will always have to wonder if the Warp Prism is waiting to come in as he finally pushes out. Classic certainly getting into the better macro position compared to the first game. And, well, this actually could be quite a banger. We've been getting a little stunted, I suppose, on the TVPs so far, but this one's going to go a little farther. The Warp Prism has managed to circumvent, but now Stim is done. You got to be very careful about those Marines pouncing on it.
Oh, yeah, I like the drop harass here. Classic's a little paranoid. He's not been probing that much because he really thinks this is like such a committed build as Game 1 and 2 have been from Oliveira. Oliveira's drop pokes in and says, ooh, let's get out of here. We're going to be careful. Charges on the way, of course. With no blink, you can't really punish drops getting overly aggressive. So this does afford Oliveira much more mobility and control over this area, and that's a great move. Bypasses the Stalker, says, I'm faster than you with these stims. Going to get a shield battery cancel and 4 probes to start off. Nothing in the main base to defend there either. A warp in does come, though. Classic weathers that scary moment, but look at Classic's worker count. Only 45 workers, no forge. Oliveira is still building workers and doing a lot of other things. Oh my lord.
There is no blink. There is the mineral wall still up, and he almost accidentally sent it back in the line of fire, but does end up saving it. Warp Prism continuing to harass. We do have the SCVs not pulling away from the Stalkers. They're being pulled into the fight. The boys are pulled. Oliveira gonna put all of his money down. All of the chips are down. This is the all-in to win and advance him in the knockout bracket.
This is a crazy all-in, putting everything on the line right now in Game 3. One of these players will be eliminated from the tournament. Beautiful force fields to start for Classic. Oliveira has gambled big on the aggression, but Classic, he seems well prepared. The energy's running low, charges ready, Zealots coming in. He's got a massive shield batteries. Classic realized from earlier in this series, Oliveira took an aggressive stance. He saved some of the Marines from behind the force fields. The tanks are shelling, but there's still a lot of Zealots in there. The Immortals and the Stalkers getting on top. If the tanks go down, Classic can break this, and it looks like the tanks will go down.
Nice Warp Prism micro to save that Immortal right there. He does does it again. The shield battery regained the shield, and this looks poor for Oliveira. He knows that was not good enough, and even though he will not tap out, it is grim. 19 SCVs, not a big enough army to win this game. Oliveira gambled heavily, and Classic was just too prepared.
Classic played some proper defensive reactive strategy throughout this series. He has adapted and gotten better game to game, and Oliveira kept trying to make the same build work, and slight variations to it, sure. This was a crazy SCV pool, but it was all within the same realm of 3 racks heavily committed aggression. Classic scouted it, he knew what was coming, and he responded flawlessly. The adjustments Classic showed in this series really was peak PVT. I am very impressed with the Twisted Minds player, but of course it's a tragic moment for our reigning world champion. And you can see he knows he's in a terrible position now. He doesn't want to quite tap out. He wants to see if there's a way he can get back into the game. But of course, it's dawning on him the reality of what has just happened.
Yeah, he will be, unfortunately, giving that key over to Classic. Unfortunately, not able to kind of shock in all the Protoss, which I think is what he might have been going for. You know, I'll do these really aggressive builds that are a little tricky to hold on the execution, even if you have the knowledge, and hopefully I'll just bowl you right over. But he will tap out. GG, well played. Classic, one of 3 Protosses left in the tournament, will continue on in the knockout bracket.
Oh, this really is the day of the highest highs and the lowest lows, Zombie Grub. You're going to see this in every single match. One player going home, one player continuing through. Such a tense moment. I am very impressed with Classic's play. As I said throughout, the way Oliveira chose to play that series, if the Protoss is even a little off their game, they crumble under the pressure of those builds. But he just stayed so stable, scouted everything, and Classic